AskReddit by Ken. What historic fact keeps you awake at night? I'm blown away by the early mathematics that was achieved by guys who were literally inventing the concepts. Math is so freaking cool because you can derive the crazy stuff from basic principles. If you start with just the numbers 0 and 1, you can, by knowing what kinds of operations you want to do, like addition, subtraction, squaring, etc., derive all the sets of numbers, real, complex, rational, etc. The fire that destroyed the former royal castle Träckrona in Stockholm in 1697. The fire destroyed the state archives, wiping out about half a millennium of written sources on Swedish history. This is how you learn the importance of off-site backups. The Bronze Age collapse. Around 3,200 years ago, nearly all ancient civilizations in the Eastern Mediterranean and Near East region were wiped out in a widespread event societal collapse that was likely sudden and violent and followed by the Greek Dark Ages, and nobody really knows what happened. It just blows my mind. There was a really good video on this a few years ago that goes into how it was likely a strong string of coinciding geological events like earthquakes and massive droughts. Dinosaurs evolved millions of years before flowering plants. Blows my mind. Grass also evolved after the non-avian dinosaurs, that is not birds, went extinct. This means that when studios are making dinosaur documentaries, they need to find a place that doesn't have grass or have a way to prevent grass from showing up on their footage. Apparently this was an issue that BBC had to deal with when they were making Walking with Dinosaurs over 20 years ago. 400 years ago, a trip from Europe to America took 2 months. Now it takes between 7 to 13 hours. The silly thing is, 40 years ago it only took 3 hours. Deleted. No, but you don't understand. These weren't just any Allied soldiers, they were Australians and stole it in the night. That tank Carlson Mephisto is the last surviving AV-7 German tank and is on display in Brisbane, Australia. Man went from the first flight in 1903 to landing on the moon Apollo 11 in 1969. That was a period of 66 years. That was 54 years ago. My grandma was born in 1899 and died in 2001. She was 4 when the Wright brothers did their Kitty Hawk thing and was 70 when there was a giant leap for mankind. Still blows my mind. The Webb telescope has the power to see up to 13.5 billion light years away. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. That means the Webb telescope is taking pictures of things that happened 9 billion years before the Earth even existed. Imagine if the telescope can find a reflective surface so it could collect the light from Earth in the past. How little of human history was recorded or survived the ages. Modern humans have been around 300,000 years. Recorded history only goes back to the 4th-5th millennium BCE. Uncounted humans lived, loved, suffered, created, and died for 60-70x the time of all recorded history. Most of human history has no record at all and civilization is only 12,000 odd years old. This is all just a tiny blip so far. The people who lived when the Roman Empire fell didn't know that the Roman Empire was falling. Such a thing could only be seen in hindsight. We never know if we live in such times. Morgan Freeman, they were in such times. The time between copper swords and steel swords is longer than the time between steel swords and atomic bombs. I would love for someone to explain the utility of a copper sword. Were they purely for thrusting? Copper is so soft, it seems like a sword made of it wouldn't hold up to much swordplay, for lack of a better term. All of us are alive because some prehistoric person somehow survived impossible odds. It's been really tripping me out lately to think about this. Can you imagine if you could see a picture of your lineage like 100, 200, 10,000 people back? It doesn't keep me up at night, but it's an interesting fact. The oldest person alive right now is 116 years and some days. That means that 117 years ago, every single person on this planet was different. In other words, a whole new set of people are here. 117 years was not that long ago. Many Redditors reading this either have lived through the year 2000 or will live through the year 2100. People just said fuck it, I can just tough it out, when having a whole ass arrow stuck in their face with 0 antibiotics. And then they died of an infection. That it's a certainty that people who were as smart as Einstein lived and died working in sweatshops, agricultural fields, and as chattel slaves. Isaac Newton's mother forced him to leave his studies to help in her farm. If it wasn't for a professor who persuaded the mother to let Newton continue his studies, and Newton being very bad at farming, we would have lost so much. Several 100,000 years ago, the entire human population was reduced to less than 2,000 individuals. We were scarily close to extinction. And by human, I mean every species in the genus Homo. Not just us sapiens. We don't know a damn thing of what the gods and myths of the people who first inhabited England are, and we likely never will. The Scots, Welsh and Irish have their own myths and legends that have survived and passed down. But what is now England was battered so much over the years by Roman, Anglo-Saxon, Viking and French invasions, that there is little to nothing left of what was there originally. It's why Stonehenge is such a big deal to England. It looks like a pile of rocks to most, but it's one of a few things left of that forgotten people. We know it to be a shrine or an altar, but to what ancient gods we'll never know. I find that rather sad. We don't even know what the Picts called themselves. That was just something the Romans called them. The ruins of Pompeii. I never stop being amazed at how those corpses were preserved. It's so tangible. You're not seeing bodies. You're seeing the gaps their bodies left in the ash. Way worse. World population was 2.5 billion in 1950. In 2023 we crossed the 8 billion mark. And there were only 1.2 billion people in 1900. 1,800. 1 billion people. 3,500 years ago. 100 million people on Earth. Genius Con once killed so many people in a fairly short span of time that scientists are able to detect a fall in atmospheric CO2. It was some insane number like 2 million people in 6 months. Doing that without guns seems straight up impossible, but he somehow pulled it off. Mankind took tens of thousands of years to develop metalworking, but the lives of Orville Wright and Neil Armstrong overlapped by 18 years. Julian the Apostate died because he was in a hurry and didn't want to wear his armor. If he had survived and continued as emperor, world would be very different. Charlie Chaplin entered a Charlie Chaplin look-alike contest and came in third. That happened to Dolly Parton as well. She lost her drag queen. The first-hand accounts of people wandering through what the Mongols left behind after destroying their enemy. 28 years ago the jerk upstairs over my condo was born and he never learned how to be quiet at night. You're literally the only person who has lost sleep over history on this thread.